Yeah, same. Let's do it now. They're exposed. Shot.
We just spent the last 24 hours building an anti-thermal underground hide site. Today, two of our good buddies are gonna see if they can hunt us down in the woods with thermal drones and thermal mounted rifle optics.
It smells really bad in there. Today you guys are gonna watch two different storylines unfold. One of me and Josh as we developed and built this anti-thermal hide. We had a couple constraints. We had less than 24 hours to build it. We could use any tools that we wanted, but we could not check our work. We had to rely on our own knowledge and understanding of how thermal optics operate in order to mask our signature, but we could not check our work with our own thermals.
The second storyline is actually going to be a whole lot better in my opinion. It's going to follow Jonathan and Steve, two of our buddies, two former Army guys. They definitely know their way around the woods and they definitely understand how to recon an area. So you get to watch them as they decide how to tackle the problem, which is me and Josh hiding somewhere in the middle of nowhere. Now we've given them some information. We've given them a map. We've given them a 11-acre radius in which to search for a potential hide site or a potential fighting position, but they have to decide how to go about actually finding us. Now this exercise has a time limit of 2 hours. They have to find us within 2 hours. They can use Chad as their thermal drone pilot, but because they are not pilots themselves and because Chad also knows where we're at because he filmed us building it, he can't give them any information whatsoever. They have to watch the drone feed and direct him and tell him what to do. That's it. From there, both of these guys have handheld thermal binoculars. Jonathan has one on his rifle, Steve has one just in his hand, and they're gonna be able to scan from a ground level to see if they can spot us or our hide. Now this can end one of three ways. Either they find us and they kill us while we're in our hide site, or we find them and we spot them and we kill them. Or we never see each other and they just wander off into nowhere and are never to be seen again. With that being said, let's hop into hunting humans.
So for those at home, what we're doing is we have a map of the area that we need to recon. We have an area that we're reconning, is a very specific area. And so what we've done is we looked at the map, looked at the high ground, the surrounding area, intel we got from the area based on some other factors, and determined to our best guess where we think they're gonna be. Since we're passing one of those points right now and we have limited flight time with the drone, we're gonna throw the drone up now. Since we're close, do a quick scan and then get to our starting point for the dismounted reconnaissance later on.
Yeah, I feel like we do like a loop of the area, then we do a quick like check our path or our route to RP1, bring the drone back and then head out.
Okay, let's do it.
Just waiting for them to say they're ready.
Yeah, well, once they're ready. There's no room in here, dude.
I feel like it was more spacious when we said it the first time.
Yeah, me too.
This works really well to blaze through this RELV netting because I can get it close to the net without touching it. You could probably use an EOTech magnifier as well if you wanted to, but having something in a really tight space, I can see out to 100 yards pretty dang well. It's not about magnifying, it's about seeing past and through all of it. Works great.
Yeah, I don't know where that drone is, honestly. We could just go to RP1 and go from there, because I don't know where the drone is. And let's just go from RP1, we'll set it off on a specific direction, and
All right.
just call it back.
All right, we need to bring the drone back and we're gonna head to RP1.
All right, moving to RP1.
All right. Quite frankly, the technology aspect of this is giving me anxiety.
Taking a short halt to look at something real quick. Okay, just nothing. We're good to go.
Typically in this situation, we'd be working to improve our fighting positions, trying to fix the sight lines, but we know that they are actively hunting us in a fairly small area, so we're actually on.
What you seeing?
I just figured since it dips down, it'd be nice to take a quick look before we bust out of this brush.
All right, so I'm just going to talk through whenever I stop to observe anything, from doing any kind of observation. So, fundamentals of reconnaissance. One of them is do not leave reconnaissance assets in reserve. So you want to use all the tools you have available, right? You don't have to deploy them all at once, but you want to use the stuff that you have, right? Don't not use it. So when I'm doing a scan, one little tip, scan the opposite way that you read. So if you read left to right, like most Western people do, scan from right to left. Your eyes will pick up more anomalies that you're not used to seeing if you scan opposite of how you read. And then I'm doing a scan with my thermal, and I'm doing a scan with my glass, so that I'm using both my optics. Thermal will pick up things that glass won't, and then just straight up glass can see things that thermal can't. So use all your tools and have a plan for how you're gonna scan.
Thank you, Jonathan.
No problem, man.
All right, let's
just
go.
your friendly neighborhood Cav Scout.
All right, lead the way.
Well, I don't know where we're going. That's you said you know where you're going. I'm lost.
So when we originally built this hide, we actually had pretty darn good sight lines. What we did was we decided, okay, what do we need to have eyes on? And then we just built the best possible structure we could based on that. Well, we had 75-mile-an-hour winds last night. Tornadoes came through here and absolutely demolished our hide. It caved in from the top down. So we had about 30 minutes before the whole thing started to do our best to repair it. And we did a pretty decent job, but it cut down on the amount of space we had. About 6 inches high, so about 6 inches lower. And now we have 2 poles in the middle of this thing, making it very difficult for us to move around. If it was just one person, it'd be fine, but 2 people, it's a nightmare. Now, normally, sound would be our ally, but it rained last night in that massive storm, so we don't get the benefit of hearing the crackling of leaves underneath the footsteps. You can move through these woods pretty quiet right now.
Hey, Steve, is that ridge line ahead? Is that the one where our RP's on? And that's like
It's that clearing right there.
Okay, cool.
I'm just trying to stay a little bit wider of the search area because like our route's like
Yeah.
close. I'm gonna get to this next clearing, stay on the edge, and then we're gonna pop the drone up and have you work our search pattern for us and then bring it back.
Sounds like a good idea.
Also, just in case, I'm hoping they did something that produces way too many like hard angles
Yeah.
in one little spot.
Yeah.
Because some of these though, with the down trees and stuff, sure they're not going to be in a gully or a draw.
Yeah.
But I say we get up here to the edge of the clearing, call that good, stay in there, search the area real quick, like in our vicinity, and then have Chad send the drone up.
Yeah. 525, 100s.
Yeah, buddy.
Yeah, buddy.
He's just saying numbers. That doesn't really mean anything.
So 525s, 100s. When you get to an area, you search 5 meters outside your area, 25 meters outside your area, and 100 meters. So you don't like stop and take a rest and you're on top of the bad guys. It's a bad time. Or an IED if you're in GWAT. So we just got to our rally point. We're gonna do what's called sills. Just stop, look, listen, and smell. So we're just gonna stop, be quiet for about 5 minutes, observe what we can observe, but really just not do anything. See if we can't hear, smell, or see something that might be indicative of bad guys.
So we're up here, and then we need to search the rest of this ridge line, and then come down this way, and then kind of like, we think somewhere in this area is going to be the highest probability. So we'd like to hit the drone heavy with this like hillside here. There's a draw that comes in.
All right.
Let's do that.
Drone is in the air, I can hear. I'll bet you they did a little bit of scouting around just because they want to be a little sporty and see if they can find us on their own.
Full controls.
We do not have good this OSB dirt and leaf roof holds up for us.
Alrighty.
One gap, if they get the right angle, they're gonna be able to see us. There's no way around it, given the damage done to our structure. I did take the time to, since we couldn't fix our structure perfectly, to create two different areas as a distraction.
All right, so we just did a quick drone scan of the area, and from our rally point here, with this being a pine tree forest, it's still got a bunch of foliage. So with the trees moving and with the amount of foliage, we weren't able to pick up anything on the thermal drone. So it could be because of the terrain, it could just be because they built that good of a hide site. But that being said, you know, I think keep in mind that like a thermal drone isn't the all-seeing eye of Sauron. I mean, cloak and staff aside. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna physically go and do like an actual physical reconnaissance of the area. We're gonna walk a specific path that we've picked that's gonna give us some visibility into where we think the hide site might be. Yeah, we're just gonna go check it the old-fashioned way, using some sensors that we have on body, like our glass and our thermals.
Yeah, other than being able to see, like, there was some like very clear wide open spaces that are like, it's likely not going to be it.
Yeah.
Everything's super thick, so we're just gonna have to do it the old-fashioned way.
Yeah.
Kinda.
Yeah, old leg muscles.
All right, you ready?
Yeah, let's go.
I don't hear the drone anymore. They probably just tell we've been landed it. But if they saw anything, yeah, if I were them, if I were gonna be flying the drone, I would pretty much just fly it to all of the high areas. So I'd give it probably 30 minutes and we might see some action. And by that I mean we take a shot on one of them.
So we're on the very hilltop, and it's like, it doesn't there's a steel target they shoot out here, so we got to be close to.
Yeah, well, our search area should be basically like that way.
It is the bulk or center of it. Like, if we went straight that way, we'd be walking into the thickest part of it.
Yeah, so we'll stay on, so based on our map reconnaissance, we're gonna stay on top of this ridge line, and it should short form a U shape where it goes up and then it curves around to the right.
Yeah,
and there's the valley down the middle. The valley down the middle is the last known location of those intel.
They're at like the point of a draw.
Yeah, which would make sense if the OP was dug into that hillside. I don't know about you, but this foliage and stuff is just wrecking thermals, which is what it does. I mean, that's thermal only works if you can see the thing that's hot.
I took a little bit of netting and I put it about 200 yards away from where we're at right now and left some of the straight edges on the blanket out. So maybe zoom in on that, or zero in on that. And I also left a bag stowed beside a big tree root elsewhere. So maybe that will catch their attention and not us.
I want to get in like just as the ground starts to
To dip down.
dip down.
Yep.
Surely not.
I mean,
Poke it with your stick.
is there a YouTuber in there?
It blows up like
It's just IEDs. I got a clear line of sight over here, so I'm just gonna scan this, and I'm
with that lighter piece of wood, and then that horizontal line is that what you're looking at?
just looking at the majority of this. Like, not that in particular. No. I do see something weird down there, though.
I can't quite tell. You see what I'm looking at straight from me?
Yeah, it's around like where the brown lump is.
See, they dug a hole, so that's probably not it. And I don't get any like anything heat-wise from it. That
Yeah, I can just go and take a look at it real quick.
okay, let's do that.
I'll just do that real quick.
There's MRE trash.
All right, so we found a decoy hide site, or an old hide site.
Yeah, you see what I'm talking about? Like it was like
Yeah,
too right.
yeah, it was in, yeah. So old hide site, MRE trash, very clearly like man-made with the way that the leaves and the branches and everything are laid on there.
Jonathan, it's definitely a structure.
Hey, Steve, so it's a like a overnight shelter, like a teepee.
Yeah. I'm gonna box it off and then
Come at it from the side.
Sounds good.
Steve said it's definitely a structure. Drew, keep an eye out, see if you can shoot him first. You stay on observation since you've got the best look, and I'll just react. They found our old structure. They did not find us. He found the old structure. Steve is right up there.
There's also something really dark back there. I can't figure out what it is. So I'm gonna push that way, and then we can kind of scoot back around to the edge of this, make our way up that other ridge line.
is that zip ties down there? You see that white X? Do you see straight ahead of us?
I see a sappy plate.
You do?
Yep. See my laser again on the tree right in front of me?
Is that the dark spot I'm looking at? Is a sappy plate?
Right there?
All right, well, let's go check it out unless there's a
Yeah.
booby trap.
Yeah.
Well, we might as well go check it out.
Yeah, it's probably where they were shooting sappy plate the other day, but yeah.
John, it's old.
I'm gonna come to your location and we can do a map check.
We're coming up on an hour, and we want to make this so that, you know, they can complete this. So we're probably going to fire up a shot here sometime soon and give them some some audio data to then have to, you know, react to and help them narrow in on us. I'm really curious how this looks up close. I don't know if they spotted us on drone or not, and I don't know if they've seen us through the handheld binocular thermal, but if they did spot us on drone, they know where we're at. If they didn't spot us on drone, then this will at least draw them in close enough to where they're going to start using their handheld thermals. I'm really curious to see how this plays against that. So, yeah, we'll give them some stimulus here in a minute. That means they did not see us on drone, or else we were just one of the spots they found on drone. Hey, it's been an hour. Do you want to give them a shot? I want to see if we can kill them. Okay, alright.
Hey, how silly would it be if we just needed to go here?
Just go to the actual point.
Go to the
Yeah.
actual
Since we don't have a command structure we're reporting to, basically just making notes of what we see and where when we came along. So we came up along that old OP that had some MRE trash in it. It was clearly like an old position back just south of RP1. We came upon this, which is like some kind of structure that someone built, obviously to spend the night in. Some equipment laying around, sappy plates, etc. Just marking down that as where that is on my map and putting it in my notes. If I was reporting, this is stuff I'd be calling in. One of the fundamentals of reconnaissance is to report rapidly and accurately, so that whoever is in charge, organizing you, has a good picture of what's going on. That being said, we're going to continue our movement.
Honestly, I bet if we just go boop, boop, that's the last known, and then we, just like you said, we're going to come back
Yeah.
through here, but I'm starting to think maybe somewhere in here. Just because of
Along
like,
that ridge line there.
yeah.
Just took my ears off. Our audible voices in this direction. So let's take a shot. Listen. come out of our fort.
Hold on. He's right here.
Is that close?
Yeah, he's right there. Time of 1 hour, 15 minutes.
Yes! That's exactly what I wanted. Yes!
Okay, well, they were at the disadvantage.
They were.
Yes, let's go!
What's up, boys? I think given another 40 minutes, you guys would have found us.
So how much ground did you guys cover? I mean, we went from, I don't know how many.
We went from Rally Point 1.
Quite a bit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
We moved
start
around a bunch. Yeah.
So start at the beginning. What'd you guys do?
All right, so from the beginning, we went from the trucks. No, we were at the LZ, when you guys said you were ready. Flew up the drone to see if we could do like a quick, since we were already next to the search area, do a quick sweep, didn't see anything. Got to the rally point, threw up the drone again to do a sweep from rally point 1. I did like a visual sweep from rally point 1 because it had like decent sight lines into the draw. At that point, we didn't see anything on drone, so we moved south out of
Nothing
RP.
on drone stuck out.
Nothing. Like we found something earlier. It looked like a tarp. It looked like, but it was out of the search area. Like it was not in the search area. It was to the east. So what we realized is, I guess, an important lesson here is, yes, we had a thermal drone, but Steve and I have never worked with our drone operator. We had no way of communicating where the drone was to the team, so they could be like, "Hey, I see a thing here," and we know where in real space that is. Well, the drone sees something, but where's the drone? I don't know. Fly the drone back to us. We'll see what direction it comes from. Like, because there was the gadget was there, but there was no system supporting the gadget, so it was basically useless in that sense.
So there's a high-tech and a low-tech way to do that. The high-tech way is you just loop the drone feed in with ATAC.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you can so the drone on your ATAC maps looks just like a node, like a person.
Yeah.
But you see its field of view.
Gotcha.
The older method is, or the more primitive method is, if you know where your drone operator is, then he calls out a bearing and you have your map, and then you just, from his perspective, you go to that bearing, you're like, okay, I know he's looking in that direction. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You couldn't distinguish, like, it's just, you could see trees and then it's just like gray water.
Yeah.
Went like so far down the trees, and then if there was an opening, then it glowed or like was bright white. But
so we gave ourselves a little bit of constraints when building this. We built this and we basically gave ourselves the rule that we have to use only what we know, and we can't test and verify anything. So based on what we've learned about thermal mitigation and hiding from thermal, we built this thing out, but we could not check our work. We were not allowed to check our work. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you didn't come out with a thermal and look at yourself.
Nope.
Yeah.
Exactly. So when we get done here, we should honestly take like a handheld and just like walk around this thing too. I think you guys were smart to not have just, I think the dumb play would have been like, well, we're just going to saunter down to the middle of everything.
And look up.
Yeah, because that's just like a death trap. So the fact that y'all were going around the ridges kind of,
Yep.
just like slightly below them.
Yeah, so the plan was, honestly, what got us closest to your position was nothing to do with being out here at all. It was literally just looking at the map, looking at the terrain, looking at the information that you'd given us, which was the last known location of those UN guys that went missing, which was in the bottom of the bowl, which tells me that they were probably shot or observed or last engaged from somewhere on top of the bowl. And then just the way that the terrain was laid out, it was just like we knew. I know you guys, I know my enemy, I guess, well enough to know that you guys are competent enough to not be on top of the ridgeline. Yep. You're going to be on the military crest, most likely. So our plan, like if I had to just drop ordnance instead of actually coming out here, I think you guys would have been like the second place I bombed.
Yeah, totally. I will say, I told Josh right before we came out, I was like, if there's any more than 2 of them, we'd be so screwed.
Yeah.
Like, even if they didn't have ordnance.
When you died, did you have a pretty good idea where it came from?
Yeah. I mean, because I heard it, and then you were like, you're dead. And I was like, it was one of 2 places. I was like, either they got some crazy something on they're like skirting the side of the hill, shooting that way.
Or somewhere
and they're like, I thought you were like either shooting us out of the back of your hide, like we had passed it, or I was like, it's right here.
So our primary observation area is out that way. We built a secondary one out here, but that part collapsed and we only had about this much. I'll let y'all hop down there and look through
right
it.
there, that hole right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we have like some thermal stuff up on there, on the inside, but like it is so hard to see. The moment I saw you, you had probably maybe 10 steps before you would have been out of my sight.
Yeah.
And I just like scrambled and grabbed this thing and took a shot. But if this were a good fighting position, it would be a terrible hide site. And if this were a good hide site, it'd be a terrible fighting position.
Yeah.
And so we kind of got the worst of both worlds.
Yeah.
That hill face or that hill right there, I thought you were going to be somewhere dug into that.
Yeah.
And then you'd seen us out the side. And so my half was going to come bebopping down different low points and try to and see what was going on. I was like, it's like they saw him, I'm lower than him. So if they saw him, he's dead. If they haven't seen me, I'm in the low ground. Well, I'm going to try and squirrel around and see what they can see.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. I had only seen him, and I just saw movement. I just saw like the green.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was like, oh, gun. And so, yeah.
But my plan,
Right. For
you've been like, oh, look at this idiot. Bam.
So this is our hide site, hide hole, whatever you want to call it. If you think it's hide hole, let us know down in the in the description. But Josh and I decided, all right, if we want to build something out here in the woods to hide from thermal and to potentially take shots on Jonathan and Steve, what do we need to build? What do we need it to look like, and how functional do we need it to be? And so we decided, all right, our lanes of fire need to take the priority. So what areas do we want to observe, right? And then we'll build it around that. So we figured out our lane is going to be this little valley right here and this little ridge up here, and we could always shoot uphill if we needed to, but these were our two primary like areas that we wanted to be able to keep eyes on, right? Then came down the question of, well, are we building a hide site or are we building a firing position? Because there is definitely a very delicate balance between the two. It's kind of a mix of both. It's the best that we could do to give us a decent shooting position, but at the same time, it was a very uncomfortable hide hole. Here we go, hide hole again. So the first thing we decided to do was dig, because we wanted to get under the earth a little bit so that whenever we put a topper on all of this, it wouldn't stand out from the landscape very much. And I think we did a pretty decent job of that. The bad thing is that Tennessee earth, it sucks. 2 inches down, you start hitting rock. And you know all these videos where people are like, oh, I built this amazing underground house you know, in the middle of nowhere in a day. It's like, yeah, they're like digging into pure dirt or like sand. Out here in Tennessee, you're hitting rock within 2 to 3 inches. And so we managed to get a couple feet down and kind of spread it out. And then from there, we just used a bunch of scrap stuff that we had laying around. We brought in some old OSB and covered it all up. And originally it didn't need this structural support that you see on the inside. Originally we just kind of like zipped it all together, but we did have a tornado over the weekend and lots of rain and tons of wind, and it collapsed the whole structure in on itself. And then before this exercise started, we had 30 minutes to try and repair it. So we covered the top with dirt to further insulate from the thermal drone, because if you just put sheets of plywood out, well, a thermal drone is going to be able to pick up on those lines really well. And then we camouflaged the dirt with all this, you know, all this foliage that you see. And then came the issue of, what do we do with all this dirt? Then we had to camouflage the dirt. So we used some of it to build some sandbags to give us a little bit of extra protection while we're down in there. And then we bust in a tree from up the hill that had naturally fallen, not one that we had cut with a chainsaw, because those clean lines are pretty easy to spot, right? So we carried this in, laid it across the top of it. That's how we built it. And it absolutely sucked.
So if we were to go back and do it again, a couple things that I would change. Number one, OSB is not, it's probably not structurally the most sound material to put over your head with a bunch of dirt and a bunch of branches and trees and all that stuff. It was working great when it was dry and we put it all together. In hindsight, no surprise that when the rains came, it all just collapsed in. And secondly, is building in some form of structural support, I guess I'll say. So whether you're doing an A-frame and you're lashing some wood together, some natural materials to actually give yourself some support, that would be incredible. This is a fairly well hidden hide site. I wish that we had better lanes to visualize and actually see out. So we could probably prop it up a little bit more, but once you're actually in, it was very, very tight and confined. Now, the biggest reason for that is because we had to put wood up in order to prop it up and to keep it standing. Even still, we could make it work, but if Drew and I were moving around and trading parts back and forth and handing each other rifles or whatever, it's not the most ideal space. Now,
In order to make more space, you're probably gonna have to dig some more as well. And as Drew alluded to, it was very difficult to dig. All things considered, the fact that Steve and Jonathan struggled to even find us, apparently we did a pretty good job hiding, but we could not see out nearly as well as I wish we could. Now, generally in the woods, if you just drop a tree right on top of your hide site, if there's not other trees that are already down, it's gonna stand out because it's a horizontal tree as opposed to a vertical tree. But being that we have all this, there's a lot of deadfall and a lot of trees that have dropped because of storms and high wind. It fits, and it fits the storyline that you're already seeing out here in the woods.
All right, so welcome to our crib. Now, originally these two pieces of wood were not here because we had it all it was holding itself up, right? We had it zipped to the top, and it was just great. The tree that goes over the top of this, we actually had zipped this plywood or this OSB up into that log, which is what gave us the support. But once all that came down, we had to do the best that we could with 30 minutes on hand, and so we quickly chopped these two logs to give it some support. It makes moving around in here freaking awful. We were going into this knowing that we were going to have to fight low and be low the whole time. But with that being said, if you're ever doing stuff like this, keep in mind, like, there's a reason why dudes take off their helmets a lot of times, because you don't have a lot of head space, right? So being able to take off our helmets and still have comms going, which is a good, a big pro for actually wearing over ears like this underneath your helmet, or just having an extra set if you have them, is great. But then again, I'm having to farm all this off my chest rig, because once we got in here, I was like, you know what, I'm going to take off my chest rig and just stage my ammo, which you'll see it'll happen sometimes, especially if you're planning to die in place. If you're not planning on having to, like, hey, we need to get out of here really quickly, then yeah, you can take off your stuff and
die comfy.
Just stage your ammo. But I did leave all this unstrapped, so if we did have to get out of here pretty quickly, I could literally just throw the top part of my chest rig over my head and get out. I'm not really worrying about things dangling at that point. I'm just worrying about getting out.
Yeah, as funny as it is, how you set up your gear is going to enable you to work in more confined spaces or not, as well as the gear that you select. So obviously having a super small chest rig would be very, very easy to maneuver around in here if that's all that you have. Honestly, even having slick armor, just because the plates don't bend when you're in a really hunched over position, like, I don't want to say it'd be impossible, but it would be even worse having a plate carrier in here. So a chest rig that's flexible, whether it's a split rig or something that you can actually get fairly comfortable in, that matters.
So originally when we built this, we wanted to build it so that it would insulate us, so it would keep us a little bit warmer, but also to protect our heat from showing out to the outside. A lot of people love, like, Mylar blankets, like, oh yeah, all you need to defeat thermal is Mylar. And well, we've shown on our channel before why that's a terrible idea because of how easily it rips. Well, one thing that does work pretty well, that doesn't rip, is Mylar insulation. You can buy this stuff at Lowe's or Home Depot. It's like $23 for a roll, and it's basically just bubble wrap with Mylar on both sides. And so we had actually stapled this up to the underneath side to give us a little bit of insulation. We ended up having to chop it because it was part of the whole structure that fell in, but that was originally the idea behind this. And also in terms of, like, thermal mitigation, it creates a little bit of an air gap between you and the ceiling, and whatever the ceiling is needs to stay the environment's temperature so it doesn't stand out to a thermal drone. Though it was against the rules for us to observe this with thermal to see if we had done our job well, we did stand back and just look at it with the naked eye, and while we were standing about 100 yards away from it, we noticed a shimmer, a glimmer, and that was just some sunlight happened to come through the front of this whole thing and bounce off of this, and it created almost like a scope glint from Battlefield 6, right? Like, it looked exactly like that. And so we came back in here and we hit it with some spray paint, and it eliminated that glint.
The other concerns that I had was this air gap right here where you can see through. Yeah, we've got thermal netting down in the front of it, but I was genuinely concerned about just seeing this material or just a kind of a black shadowy hole from the outside. But as it turns out, this camo anti-thermal blanket from Relv absolutely did the job. It's very difficult to find out in the woods, even from 10 yards away, when you know exactly where this hide site is. Now, the second thing that I was worried about was the fact that when you are building camouflage of any kind, whether it's on body, a vehicle, or, you know, a hide site to some degree. Generally, there's a rule where you do not use more than 30% or ideally 10% of man-made materials. You want to go as natural as possible if you can. And when we have this much OSB, when we have this much man-made material, I was really concerned about the harsh edges outlining and just being clear as day. Like, that's a straight line. There's a corner that also looks like OSB texture. So at least what we did a little bit, you can see right here, is around the edge of the whole structure, we let pine needles and leaves and dirt fall off over the edges to try and mask that a little bit. As you can see from the outside, it did a pretty good job. The dirt under the leaves and all of this extra foliage, that actually helped keep that stuff, all the lightweight leaves, on our structure. Now, if we'd supported it a little bit better, it all would have worked out just great. So hey, learning points, and all things considered, we did better than I expected.
One thing that's nice about just being slightly below the ground is that it masks a lot of our sound, which helped a lot because with the added constraints of having these pillars here, it made a lot of sound just moving around even slightly in here. Even though it's a dirt floor, it's like the clattering of our guns, the clattering of our kit, you know, bumping this, like, but it's very, very difficult to hear any of that from the outside, even just like 10 feet away, because we're underground, underneath some boards that have dirt on top of that. It's so good that even here, just like, you know, just a foot or two below ground, our phones have no signal whatsoever at all. It's all SOS, so not bad.
All right, guys, I went to the exact spot that both Steve and Jonathan were killed. Where we are right now is 50 yards from the hide site. I know exactly where it is, and that's brutal. Let me show you with the trigger cam as well as the thermal down on my gun as well. So Drew told me he does not have his thermal netting up. That down tree is the top of our hide site. And if I zoom out over here, that's what the rest of these woods look like. It is very well blended in, and that right there is where Steve died, right there. Now let me flip over the thermal. Now that right there is Drew's head with the thermal. So he does not have the thermal netting up. Let me tell him to flip the, actually, can one of you guys tell him to put the thermal netting up? Yeah, that looks amazing. Now you can still see a little bit of temperature, but in regards to the rest of the forest. Steve, did you even have any idea where this came from when you were shot?
You see straight out ahead of you, all this vertical laying down?
Yeah.
You see closest to us, the thickest tree that's down?
Yeah.
At the base of it, it looks like there's like, that's the peak hole that digs out and underneath it.
Okay.
That's what I keyed in, because it also looked, I mean, it looked like from here that was a lot of meant to look like deadfall, not actual deadfall, and then you can see a little bit how it appears from this angle to be like a dugout underneath it, like,
yeah,
like you guys
dug it out
and left a fort.
Interesting. I'm curious what it looks like from up on top of this ridge, actually looking down into the face of the hide site. Let's go look at that. We're probably at about 70 yards here, but we are at the same equal plane as the hide site. This is very hard to see. Now, we know exactly where the hide site is. We know where Drew is. Let's start with thermal. The thermal net is up and Drew is looking right at us. All right, let's see if we can blaze through that without thermal. That is the hide site in there just below our backpacks and gear. All right, Drew is moving his hand around for 10 seconds to see if we get anything. Drew said he can see us clear as day. Someone tell him we got nothing. All right, so as it stands, Drew can see us. The thermal netting is up. I'm gonna use the RH25 and see if I can blaze through and actually, hopefully, see him in there. All right, I think I'm looking at where it is. Drew, go ahead and someone tell Drew. Oh, I have some movement. Yep, that's him. Can you tell him to move his hands around? Yeah. Yeah, movement helps. Let me kick this thermal off. Oh my gosh, man. Yeah, when he's moving his hands a little bit, I can tell. but even still, he is so pushed back down into the side of the hill. I have to be looking with magnification at the exact spot to find exactly where he is. Thermal helps, of course, as long as the thermal net is down, but with that thermal net up, I just can't see it at all. When you combine thermal with natural material, that's what really lets that anti-thermal material shine. If you use just an anti-thermal blanket, it kind of stands out a little bit. You need to integrate it with natural material as well, because that natural material is holding the same temperature as everything else out here in the woods. That's what really hides you. We are now 10 to 15 feet away from the hide site. We have thermal, we're looking at it, and I fully understand why these guys couldn't see us. You shouldn't feel bad at all. This is rough. Yeah, so for thermal purposes, that's what Fisher looks like. And then let's look at the hide site. Can you see me? Oh, there you are. There you are. That's it. Yeah. So again, it all kind of comes back to using natural vegetation or thermal mass in front of what it is that you're trying to hide. Blending that with your man-made material, that's the sweet spot. What does it look like if you saw someone shooting from it, though? All right, this has been a really fun experiment for us. It was all a lot of theory for Drew and I, at least, on here's what we would do and here's how it would turn out. But when you actually do it yourself, you learn a lot. But you guys had to hunt us. So what are some things that you guys have as far as the takeaway goes from your side of not knowing where we were at and having a lot of tools at your disposal to try and find us?
Well, we got that email, went through the mission brief or the parameters that you set. I hit John up because I had some technical difficulties getting the app to work. We started talking about kind of the plan based off the terrain and then the information provided in the brief. Use the UN last known position. That was like that and terrain, I think, were the biggest takeaways from the mission brief on how we were going to kind of like set up our route and our plan for like searching for you guys, basically. From there, and then implementing it, coming through, seeing this now and knowing where it's at, and then even going back out, you know, to areas that where you guys engaged us, we would have had to fall on you guys. Even with the thermals.
Yeah, so we would have never found you guys, and I kind of figured that was the case. Having done work with hide sites and stuff before, a well-done hide site, like, you're just not going to find it most of the time. Like Steve said, I think our best work that got us closest to finding the hide site was assessing the map and where it made sense for the hide site to be based on the intel we had. My biggest takeaway from this is that all the tools and gadgets in the world don't really do anything for you if you don't have a plan of how to integrate them and you don't have time and reps on them. Lots of lessons to be learned.
My biggest takeaway is that bushcraft is still king. We can have all the fancy gadgets and gizmos. You know, comment sections love to, you know, come alive with, you know, statements like, oh, well, you know, drones exist, so this is all pointless, and thermal exists, so this is all pointless. And it's like, well, just a couple dudes out in the woods have proved that wrong time and time again. If you understand the environment, if you understand the terrain, if you understand basic bushcraft, like nothing we did here was special, you can beat like really fancy state-of-the-art equipment, period. That, and if you do build hide sites, don't expect them to last forever. Check on them from time to time, and you know, they're probably gonna fall apart eventually. They're not meant to last forever.
Yeah, if there's anything that I learned, it's that finding the site that we built was very difficult to spot, even if you know exactly where it is. It's hard to confirm. It's hard to see. If someone gave me a grid coordinate and they were like, it is on this hillside, even still, I wouldn't be confident to be like, that right there, that is exactly where it is. It's very difficult to do. So with that in mind, we probably could have built more of a fighting position than a hide site, if that was the goal. If the goal was just to hide and not be seen, we did a great job. If we wanted to be able to fight better from it, have different points of escape or egress, we wanted to have better lines of sight, we could have afforded ourselves more elevation above the ground, a little bit less foliage in front of us, because all things considered, that is one thing that stands out. Is it's kind of a big pile of trees. Now, you can't confirm that there's anything in there, but we could have taken some of that stuff away, given ourselves inside of the hide site more visual capability, and still not been able to be seen. While the thermal nets and some of the fancy stuff that we did on the inside, it flat out works and it makes our job easier. It is not the thing that kept us from being seen. It was the knowledge and experience that we've had just playing around with thermal stuff to figure out if there's a thermal signature in front of me and I'm hiding behind it, I don't necessarily need a thermal blanket to hide. So with all that being said, we hid more than we actually needed to, which is crazy.
So the one big question that we didn't answer since we started this video is why? Why are we out here doing this? Well, because we're Americans and we have gear. And we believe in the American heritage, which is we should be able to possess the gear that our government has in case it ever becomes a problem. And so part of that is training, part of that is experimenting, part of that is playing out in the woods with your buddies. You can call it whatever you want, but you're learning stuff, you're getting better at stuff, and you're figuring out what does work and what doesn't work. So I would say as a challenge, if you enjoyed this video, is you don't have to go to Milsom West, you don't have to go to some like official event or some official class. You can come up with a mission in your own backyard or in your own woods or in like a local forest or whatever, and just go and do stuff with your friends. Just go and experiment. This was a 2-hour-long exercise. Granted, for me and Josh, it was more like
16 hours if you add it all together.
Yeah.
Prep work.
Yeah, there's a lot of prep work. However, we created a situation here in which if more dudes were free on a Monday afternoon, we could have had 10 to 15 dudes out here hunting us, which would have been awesome and would have changed what we did. We may not have taken a shot if we saw there were 10 guys out here. We may have just tried to be even more quiet and close up some of the holes that were exposed. But it's on you.